please welcome Candace M. Moore, Associate Clinical Professor of Student Affairs and Harold R.W. Benjamin Professor.
Hold your head up. You don't need to look down. Respect yourself, for it is on the shoulders of your forefathers and mothers that you stand here today. Be kind to others, and remember, there's trouble all over this world, but you are not alone. As a young Black girl growing up in the South of the United States, these are just the first of the many lessons I can remember my first teachers, my parents, instilling in me at a very young age to help prepare me for the future. As survivors of Jim Crow and participants in the Civil Rights Movement, their goal then and even today is that I understood that my humanity is directly connected to your humanity. Through my faith development, my parents introduced me to the work of the Reverend Dr. James Cone, where he suggested a way for us to think about liberation when he said, "Indeed, our survival and liberation depend upon the recognition of the truth when it is spoken and lived by the people. Truth is divine action entering our lives and creating the human action of liberation." Now, you may be asking yourself, how is she defining Black liberation? Well, Black liberation for me holds to three anchors. First, freedom. Second, collectivism. And third, ancestral knowing, that together compel you to dismantle oppressive laws, practices, and ways of knowing and being in this world. It is this approach to Black liberation that is embodied in me and in the work that I have been so blessed to do, both domestically and abroad. Bell Hooks, a Black feminist and distinguished scholar, reminds us that, and I quote, "Looking back, Black women involve ourselves in a process whereby we see our history as a counter-memory, allowing us to know the present and invent the future," end quote. Since the history and current reality for so many people across our global society is rooted in a dominant way of being that values Western ways of knowing and being as more valuable than other ways of knowing and being, I invite you to join me in centering Black liberation as our way of knowing and being, so we may all envision an opportunity for us to engage in collaborations that advance learning and development in culturally conscious ways. So if I may, I'm going to explore Black liberation as freedom, collectivism, and ancestral knowing, using what Bell Hooks has taught me, my own counter-memory, to invent a more liberatory future that for me rests in my collaborations with my colleagues in Ghana. In the traditions of my upbringing given to me by my ancestors and through the work of Ghanaian indigenous practice, I'll continue with my remarks using storytelling and uplifting a Ghanaian proverb to undergird my narrative. The Ghanaian proverb is, "Knowledge is like a baobab tree. No one can encompass it with their hand." Reminds us that human nature would be audacious to believe that just one person can have mastered all of it. Now you see, this is important because the baobab tree, or otherwise known as the tree of life, has adapted to its environment over the years. In the rainy season, it acts as a succulent, storing up water in its vast trunk, allowing it to produce a rich, dense fruit in the dry season. Over the years, I've had the pleasure of leading study abroad trips to Ghana for graduate students, higher ed faculty and policymakers, K-12 educators, even family and friends. I have been the recipient of a U.S. Scholar Fulbright Award to Ghana, allowing me to understand from higher ed faculty and administrators how they use their culture and tradition to support the development and well-being of graduate and college students. I've also had the opportunity to teach a global classroom with a colleague in Ghana between graduate students here at the University of Maryland and graduate students at the University of Cape Coast in Ghana. You see, at the root of each collaboration for me is the proverbial bow tree. My work has always been inspired, supported, and directed by a collectivist community of fellow scholars, students, policymakers, artists, local community members, and elders. I am grateful to each of them for joining their hand with mine to contribute to the knowledge that was there before us and continues to grow from this magnificent tree of life. Now, a significant lesson for me in the power of sustainable collaborations, produced by the fruit, if you will, of the tree, was during a global classroom session where a student posed a question that intrigued me. She asked, where do we, as graduate students and practitioners, get the space to imagine decolonizing approaches? Her question has inspired my next point. As educators, we should use Black liberation as a teaching approach, as a practice approach, to really foster their flourishing imaginations. Now, while colonialism at its root is intended to divide and conquer, I offer to you a worldview through Black liberation that focuses on collaborations so that we can engage in a more prosperous and equitable society. A significant lesson for me in the power of understanding what collaborations mean in my work and how I can advance that work is knowing that we continue to grow through our individual and our collective development. Now, in our global classroom, she had the opportunity to really explore and think about what learning and development look like. While the course was originally designed to serve as a cross-cultural learning opportunity, providing project-based learning, over the 3 years of teaching the course, my colleagues and I, along with graduate assistants from Ghana and African-American graduate assistants, shifted the curriculum to focus on African indigenous knowledge, using Black liberatory teaching practices, and also engaging in Western-informed practices and thought. You see, during the class, she had the opportunity to decenter Western ways of knowing and explore African indigenous knowledge, using Black liberatory traditions as a way to anchor herself in the curriculum. We all have a responsibility to disrupt coloniality in our work, both domestically and abroad, so that we can do what Bell Hooks encourages us to do: allow practitioners and students to invent futures that allow them to explore their creativity, really challenge previously used approaches, and think about new ways that we can engage in liberatory practice and thought. Cynthia Dillard, Dr. Cynthia Dillard, a distinguished professor and College of Education dean, calls all teachers to action when she says, all teachers must be able to teach from the depth and breadth of Black life and accomplishment, from the very spirit of Black triumph and strength. I'll leave you with this. How can you employ Black liberation in either developing or sustaining your own collaborations? To help you with the question, I offer these hints. How can you center and engage with Black liberation in ways that honor ancestral knowing? How are you situated in relation to the communities for which your work will serve? A valuable lesson to me in sustaining collaborations and uplifting Black liberation in my work has been the elevating of voice of my partners, both internationally and abroad. Black liberation calls on our collective work, especially with international partners, to not be exploitative, because our humanity is connected to their humanity, connected to their freedom, connected to their collectivism, connected to their ancestral knowing. Our humanity is connected to the tree of life.